Hey guys, this is Jason. I'm reviewing Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, directed by Brad Bird, and is the fourth film in the Mission Impossible franchise. In this film, the president has shut down IMF, where a bunch of agents are now disavowed, and only a handful of them are still doing missions, like Ethan Hunt, where they unfortunately have to go on their own without IMF's help and stop the main villain from bombing other cities after blowing up the Kremlin. For me, this is the first Mission Impossible film I watched as a teenager, and I wanted to watch this one first because I thought it was a reboot back then, and I was a dumb and lazy teenager and didn't watch the rest of the films until later, and then eventually did watch those and now realize that this is a sequel to those films, but it still feels like it's a new story with the same characters we know and love. And it's also the first film to change things up because unfortunately the IMF isn't around anymore and both Ethan and his own team are on their own and unfortunately using less gadgets for them to use with, and it brings back some characters that would later return for future films because the only actors that would return more than one film before Ghost Protocol were Tom Cruise and Ving Rhames. But now that's changed because we also have Simon Pegg coming back for the rest of the films, and with the lack of the stuff they have to use for their advantage, make their action sequences and missions feel intense and suspenseful. And that's one of the reasons why I love this film more than the first three films, because it takes some of the stuff that we loved from those films and amps them up to make them feel more intense and suspenseful. And it's a new, fresh take for both old fans and new fans of Mission Impossible, where it takes the characters and gets them to use what little they have and make them work for the mission. And unfortunately, they're also fugitives, because the main villain of the film framed Ethan for blowing up the Kremlin, so Ethan and his team are now out on the run and have to figure out how to stop this guy. And the only IMF agents left that are there to help Ethan are Benji Dunn, played by Simon Pegg, Jane Carter, played by Paula Patton, and Agent William Brandt, played by Jeremy Renner. Now, this film also had a lot to live up to because this movie came out 6 years after 3 and people thought that that was the last one back then. They didn't know if there was going to be any more after that, and Tom Cruise was getting a little older at the time and they didn't think that he would still do some action back then, and he proved them wrong with this film. He still does a lot of his own stunts. He puts himself in serious risk when you think about it, because when you look at some of the stunts in both the first 3 films and in the other action films that he is in, they are insane stunts that he has to do. And he's still capable of doing all those crazy stunts, like driving inside a car and stopping another one from getting away in a sandstorm, driving another car down into the ground through the set, and of course the famous Burj Khalifa scene where he has to climb up to this tower to this one room and run back down with a rope to get to his team. Showing this franchise can still do well with practical effects and real stunts, and when you see Tom Cruise doing those stunts in this Burj Khalifa scene, it's real. And rewatching this movie for this review and watching that scene again, I was, that was kind of tough to see because they're literally filming Tom Cruise outside of this building while you're also looking down. So if you're afraid of heights, then this might bother you. And when you see all that being real, you do get that sense when you see Tom Cruise talking to Jeremy Renner when he tells them that his line is not long enough. And then Tom Cruise goes, "No, blah." I can't really say the S word on my channel, but every time I hear Tom Cruise say that line in this scene, it makes me laugh, just the way he said it. Another reason I like this more than the first 3 films is that it's very character driven. Obviously, we know a lot about Ethan Hunt from the first 3 films, but we also get to learn other members of the team that Ethan's with, except Benji, because he's really just the guy that makes all the gadgets and helps the team throughout the film. But we do get some character development from Paula Patton's character, Jane Carter, who had a boyfriend that was killed on the job, and she feels responsible for that because she let him go on the mission on his own, which did get him killed. But unfortunately, she's also blinded by her revenge for this killer, so when she does find the killer, she has to keep it together so that she doesn't try to kill this person. Then there's Brandt, who is really uncomfortable working with Ethan because he did something to Ethan in the past that he thought he did wrong to him, which I'll explain more when I get to spoilers. Now, as for more development for Ethan, we get some backstory from some people that explain that maybe he broke up with Julia after 3, but then we later find out that there was more than just that. And this team worked really well, and I wish we got to see more of them in the other films. Sure, I'm happy to see both Tom Cruise, Ving Rhames, and Simon Pegg back for the rest of the films, but I also wish they kept Jeremy Renner and Paula Patton for the rest of the films. Sure, they did bring Renner back for Rogue Nation, but after that, both him and Patton are absent for the rest of the films. Like, I wouldn't mind if they brought both of those actors back. Like, I wouldn't mind if all 5 of those people, including Luther, were all working together. And we do get to see this team try to work together without the IMF because they're trying to do some missions where they unfortunately make some mistakes along the way because they don't have an organization anymore. But even their gadgets sadly fail a lot. Like, the lasers that they would use to cut glass just keeps turning on and off. Ethan's gloves when he's climbing on the windows keep malfunctioning. Even the machine that makes the masks for them just malfunctions and stops working, so they have to work with what they do have on their own without all of that stuff working, making their missions feel tense when they're out doing them. Another reason I love this film more than the first 3 films are the action sequences. The action sequences in the first 3 films were great too, but this film makes them more tense and suspenseful. Obviously the Burj Khalifa scene, but also in some of the other scenes. Like, there's a great sandstorm scene where Ethan is trying to catch this bad guy from getting away, and they did actually use a lot of big fans for this scene and a lot of sand to make it look like a sandstorm. This is also a very funny movie where it has some humor that mixes with the tension and the action and makes it work. Like, there's this one scene where Brandt is wearing this metal suit and he has to jump down the fan so that this device that Benji has under the fan can catch him. And Brandt is really freaking out about doing that because he's worried that it might not work and he might get killed when he jumps over this fan. But the other team don't think so because they think it's just a normal thing, or like, calm down man, Benji will jump, he'll catch you. I just love that they're being casual about it and not freaking out that he might accidentally kill himself if this doesn't work. Now, this film is directed by Brad Bird, who is mostly known for directing animated films like The Iron Giant, The Incredibles, and Ratatouille. And this is his first live-action film, and I thought he did a fantastic job with it, setting up a lot of scenes that build up a lot of tension and make them feel like they're a lot of fun, and giving us some dramatic moments for when the characters are just talking about their past. In my opinion, Brad Bird is one of the best directors to go from animation to live action. And that might be surprising to a lot of you because this movie is made by someone from Pixar and has done a great job with a live action movie. Now, I do have one issue with this film, unfortunately. Despite the fact that I do love this film, there is still one thing about it that isn't making me want to give this film an A+, and that is unfortunately the villain of this film, played by Mikhail Blumvest. I'm sorry if I got that name wrong. Rest in peace. He was a fantastic actor, but his character in this film unfortunately didn't really work for me because he's a very underdeveloped villain with nothing really interesting about him. He didn't feel threatening, he doesn't do much, and he's barely in the movie, where he is pretty much a big downgrade compared to Philip Seymour Hoffman from Mission Impossible 3. Now, there was one one deleted scene in the Blu-ray that does explain his motive for what he's doing, but I'm not gonna count it because it's a deleted scene. It's not in the movie. Now, unfortunately, I am gonna get into some spoilers for the way this film ends, so if you don't want any spoilers or anything ruined for you, then skip to this time. So, after the team defeat the villain and save a city, we find out that Brent confesses to Ethan that he was responsible for what happened to Julia and thinks that she died, where we find out from Ethan that she never really died. He just faked her death so that she would be on her own, unfortunately without him around, but she's still safe now, which ends up kinda redeeming Brent and wants to go on the mission that Ethan sent him on. Also, it is great to see Ving Rhames come back for Luther just for this ending. It's definitely great seeing him come back for this. For a long time, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol was my favorite Mission Impossible film, and for a few years it's been kinda tough for me to decide because ever since I saw Mission Impossible Fallout, that's kind of been either that film being my favorite or Ghost Protocol as my favorite, and I will explain why when I get to Fallout. But this is still the first Mission Impossible film that I loved. It had a lot of the stuff that people loved from the first three films and makes them a lot better, and adding in some new stuff for new fans and having them love this film as well. Now, if you're new to the Mission Impossible films and you're thinking of watching some of the films, I wouldn't mind if you started with Ghost Protocol because it is kind of a new start for newer fans, as well as being a great continuation for older fans as well. I'm gonna give Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol an A. So guys, if you have seen Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, what did you think about it? Do you think it's a great Mission Impossible film, or do you think that this is as bad as 2? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you like this video, then please leave a like and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss a thing, because it helps my channel grow. Hit the notification bell so you know what other videos I'm posting. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.